My name is Joe. I was born in Staten Island. I joined the service when I was 19. By that time, I'd already been smoking for a few years, probably since I was 15 or so. I even smoked through my basic training.
When I first met Joe, he had been smoking for more than half his life. I asked him how he felt about smoking, and he basically politely told me not to worry about it and not to bring it up again. We didn't get very far with that first conversation, but in my experience, that's not unusual.
No offense to anyone, but I wasn't there to talk to Jill about that. I had some other issues I wanted to work out, and smoking wasn't one of them.
Joe had just gotten into supportive housing, which moves people out of a shelter into stable, permanent housing. As a case manager, I work with residents to help them live independently and support their needs, whether health-related or helping with benefits or transportation. I saw Joe settling into his new apartment, getting to know new people, but I was also concerned. I saw Joe smoking almost every day, and we have a smoke-free building.
Every time I saw Jill, she brought up smoking. I've been smoking a long time, and you can hardly smoke anywhere nowadays. Not in bars or restaurants, or even in front of some buildings that make you walk down the street now. So, I didn't understand what she was so worried about, because it seems like not nearly as many people smoke as they used to.
I told Joe that he was right, that a lot of people have stopped smoking over the past years, but that nearly 500,000 people still die every year in the United States from tobacco-related causes.
500,000 people is a lot of people.
And I told him that there are some people who are dying earlier than everyone else.
I said, who?
People with mental health and substance use conditions, people with lower incomes, and people without college education. I told Joe that tobacco companies target some people more than others to get them addicted to tobacco, even though they know it harms their health, just so that they could continue making a profit.
I've been through some things. While I was in the service, sometimes I couldn't sleep. I'd be up in the day too, and sometimes a week or two would pass like that. Sergeants didn't like that, because you're on a schedule there. Everything's by the book. Turned out it wasn't the right place for me, which was hard. Things went downhill after I left. I'd feel great sometimes, but it never lasted. I drank and smoked to even out my moods. My family didn't see me anymore. I spent a lot of time in hospitals, the psych side. The doctor said all my symptoms pointed to bipolar disorder. I didn't even know what that was. But when they explained, it seemed to describe me. After I left the hospital, I started smoking again because it made me feel better. But when Jill told me tobacco companies are trying to get people with mental health issues hooked on smoking, it got my attention. I realized they were trying to hook me.
I'd see Joe outside smoking first thing in the morning when I'd get to work, and several times throughout the day. When there were activities, he would leave to go have a cigarette. He'd get antsy and irritable without it. Sometimes he talked about getting a job, and we discussed how if that happened, he wouldn't be able to take a smoke break when he wanted to. But I really wasn't getting through to him.
When I got my housing, that was a big relief. It was nice to have some privacy and a place of my own. I was warned not to smoke inside, but I did once, just out the window. And somebody came by and said there was a complaint about the smell of smoke coming from my room. Not being able to smoke where I wanted to was frustrating. I get that smoke travels and affects other people, but not being able to smoke put me in the worst mood.
Joe was going through nicotine withdrawal.
One of the things that I like so much about smoking is that it feels good. People don't realize that. feels good. It feels bad to stop.
I told Joe to imagine his brain like a pinball machine. When he smokes cigarettes, the brain reacts, it lights up. Nicotine is the key ingredient in cigarettes that gets people addicted and keeps them addicted. Nicotine activates a circuit in the brain known as the reward pathway, which tells the brain something good is happening. That's why Joe feels good when he smokes. The more his reward pathway lights up, the more his brain wants cigarettes.
I thought maybe nicotine causes cancer, but it's got nothing to do with that. It just makes you want the cigarette.
Since Joe is highly dependent on nicotine, he needs a higher concentration to feel good. It's no longer possible to wake up and go through the day without nicotine. When you stop that flow of nicotine from someone who's dependent on it, that person will probably feel anxious, irritable, depressed, and have trouble sleeping. They will crave nicotine.
One night, a guy in our building fell asleep while smoking and watching TV. When he woke up, his room was on fire, and in the time the alarm went off, the fire trucks came, the whole 9 yards. Afterwards, I thought about it a lot. He could have lost his housing. He could have died. We all could have. Well, I decided to talk to Jill about it.
After the night of the fire, Joe came in and said he wanted to talk. He knew he needed to be able to stay in his apartment safely, but he didn't want to be so uncomfortable when he couldn't smoke. He didn't mention anything about wanting to quit. I realized I needed to support him in that moment without making it about quitting. I asked him whether he had ever tried nicotine replacement therapy, or NRT. It comes in 5 different forms: a patch, gum, lozenge, an inhaler, and nasal spray.
Since I didn't know which would work, I decided to try them all.
I showed Joe the patch first. The patch is long-acting, so he could keep it on and keep a continuous dose of nicotine in his body instead of going outside every half hour to smoke.
I put it on my arm, the same place every day. But after a while, that gave me a little bit of an itch. I learned you have to change where you put it. You put it on your arm one day, and the next day on your back, and so on. Any place above the waist.
The patch comes in 3 different doses of 7, 14, or 21 milligrams. Joe started on 14 milligrams, but it was too low a dose for him, which we knew because he kept saying he still wanted to smoke. We got in touch with his doctor to bump him up to the 21 milligram patch. That stopped his cravings most of the time, but when he was stressed, he still craved cigarettes. Shorter acting NRTs such as gum, lozenges, inhaler, or nasal spray can be helpful for extra nicotine to counteract cravings. Joe uses a short-acting form of NRT with the patch to reduce cravings. It is perfectly safe to use one of the short-acting forms of NRT with the patch, and it works better.
It's not like regular gum. You put it in your mouth and just chew it a little bit until it starts to tingle or taste peppery. Then you tuck it between your gum and your cheek and leave it there. That didn't work for me.
So we moved on to the lozenge. That went a little better.
Same thing with the lozenge. You put it between your gum and cheek and let it dissolve slowly. That was fine. I was using these often, maybe every hour or 2. Someone else I know was only using 4 or 5 a day, so I guess it can vary.
He tried the nasal spray too.
The spray worked fast. You can take that once an hour and it helps take the edge off the cravings.
But he really took to the inhaler.
I tried them all, but I like the inhaler the best. I used that and the patch together. It took a little figuring out. I think after smoking so long, there was something natural about that hand-to-mouth motion for me. I use the inhaler and the patch together. You have these little cartridges that have nicotine in them. You puff on it, but don't take it all the way to your lungs. And then you switch out the cartridge when it's empty. I was going through 7 or 8 of them every day, but they said I could use up to 16 if I needed it.
So we go through all the options, and he says, well, how do I get it and what's it gonna cost me? Joe could get the patch, gum, lozenge over the counter at any pharmacy. But most health plans cover some form of NRT. Joe has Medicaid, which covers all forms of NRT, so they're free for him.
Jill coached me to talk to my doctor about getting a prescription for NRT, even though I'm not ready to quit. I went in. I told the doctor how my building is smoke-free. I wanted to try NRT for times like these when I can't smoke. The doctor agreed, and that's how I got my inhaler and my patch. I keep them in my apartment, but I take the inhaler with me wherever I go. My psychiatrist suggested my other meds too, because since I'm smoking less, the smoke isn't interacting with them as much.
I see Joe smoking a lot less outside the building. I see him using the inhaler. When he uses NRT, he's getting nicotine without the other toxic chemicals he would be getting if he was smoking cigarettes.
A lot of people talked to me about my smoking, but Jill talked about it the most. And then when I wanted to try something different, she was there. The timing was right.
When someone is ready to quit smoking, there are 2 other medication options to be considered: varenicline and bupropion. But for people who don't want to quit, it's important not to let the conversation about smoking drop off. People may not realize NRT can also be used in situations where someone can't smoke or smoking isn't allowed. It's a way to support someone who isn't ready to quit and continue the conversation.
Sometimes people ask me about the inhaler when they see me using it, and I tell them about NRT. My neighbor whose apartment caught fire asked me. We got to talking. Turns out we have a few things in common. We both like baseball. We're going to try and get some tickets and see a game in the stadium. In the past, I don't think I would have done things if I knew I wasn't going to be able to smoke. My neighbor told me he doesn't see his grandkids as much as he wants to because his daughter doesn't want them around secondhand smoke. I don't think I realized how, in some ways, I'd been trapped by smoking.
In the beginning, my main priorities for talking to Joe about smoking were for his health and to help him keep his apartment. But the more we talked about it, the more I understood that smoking was keeping him from doing the things he wanted to do. But I had to understand that it just wasn't where he was at the time.
In the beginning, Jill always asked me what my goals were. I wanted a steady job. I wanted to keep my housing and not break any rules. I wanted to make sure that secondhand smoke isn't harming anyone. I want to go to a game or a movie and not be worrying about whether I'm missing something because I'm stepping out to smoke. And yet, at the same time, I just wasn't ready to quit.
Talking about how he could use NRT just to manage his cravings when he couldn't smoke was where we finally started to connect. He wanted to be part of activities, but smoking was getting in the way of that before. But not anymore.
I haven't talked to Jill about it yet, but I'm thinking of quitting completely. The truth is, when I wear the patch and use the inhaler, I really don't have the urge to smoke.
Regardless of whether or not they want to quit, anyone who smokes can use NRT because they will have to get through a situation when they can't light up.
My world has opened up again. I can go anywhere, do anything, and never worry about cravings because with NRT, I'm in control.